Greetings and welcome to another edition of What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility. I am your host, Pete Pardo. Today is Tuesday, August the 29th. Summer's winding down here, folks. Is what it is, right? Fall's just right around the corner. Before we get started today, I just want to give a big shout out and a lot of positive thoughts, prayers, and vibes to the folks down in the Houston, Texas area who are being devastated by a terrible hurricane. Torrential rains, flooding. It's just really bad down there. And there's someone in my family who's down there. And they're surviving. They're doing okay, but it's not getting much better. And again, our prayers from everyone here at Sea of Tranquility go out to all the folks at Houston as they are dealing with this horrible catastrophe. And hopefully it ends really soon and everybody can get back to a normal life. But I think it's going to be a while. So anyway, back to the music. We've got a ton of new stuff that's been coming out recently, and we're going to jump right into it. We're going to start off first with Frontiers Records, a label that I'm sure a lot of you pay attention to. A lot of legacy bands, a lot of newer bands have been popping up on Frontier over the years. This first one here, our featured CD of the day, is from a band that first burst on the scene back in 1990. Their self-titled debut album created quite a stir, is still a favorite of many people, and they kind of disappeared for a long, long time. Recently reunited, resurrected with the original lineup. I'm talking about Riverdogs, California, Vivian Campbell and company. If you like their debut, this one is not much different. Very memorable songs. A lot of really tasty and gritty and muscular Vivian Campbell guitar work. Vivian's kind of come back on the scene in recent years. He's been battling cancer on and off. I believe he's okay now. He's been in Def Leppard for a number of years, and a lot of people, kind of like, hasn't really done much in Def Leppard. He's like part of the furniture there. When Vivian Campbell, most people think of his early days with Dio. It's like, and he just kind of burst on the scene as one of the hottest young guitarists of the '80s, and it's like, people want to hear that type of playing from Vivian again. Well, he puts together this band, Last in Line, basically a tribute to Ronnie, and they play some of the classic Dio songs as well as they recorded a brand new album. Great to see Vivian back in action doing that sort of thing again. Well, now he's back with Riverdogs as well, and a lot of really tasty playing on here. Some really, really good tunes on here. Let's just point out a couple for you. American Dream is quite good. The Revolution starts tonight. I like a lot. What else we got here? Golden Glow, Catalina. Top to bottom, it's a very strong album. A lot of great hooks, tasty guitar work. Rob Lamont is still a great vocalist, so I really dig it a lot. California from Riverdogs. Another band this band actually has been around for a while. A couple little times where they kind of went away for a few years, but always seem to come back strong. I'm talking about Mr. Big, Defying Gravity. All right, the classic lineup. Pat Torpey has recently been diagnosed with Parkinson's, so he actually didn't finish the whole album. We've got another drummer who my name escapes me right now, Matt Starr, who has helped out with the recording, joining Billy Sheehan, Paul Gilbert, and Eric Martin. And I believe he's going to go out on tour with the band as well. So I'm not sure how much Pat can actually play. But this is a very strong album. Open Your Eyes, Defying Gravity, Everybody Needs a Little Trouble. The 3 tunes that kick off the album are very, very strong. There's a mix of ballads. 1992 is a very cool hard rockin' tune that's kind of autobiographical. I believe talks a little bit about the bit of success they enjoyed in the early 90s, and then kind of the record company just forgot about them and whatnot. I really dig it quite a bit. Some face-melting Paul Gilbert, Billy Sheehan instrumental virtuosity on here. That's what one of the things I always liked about Mr. Big is they kind of mix Beatles-style vocal harmonies. They have a great pop sense, but they still inject a lot of really acrobatic, crazy unison playing between Sheehan and Gilbert on guitar and bass, which is great. So if you like the kind of shredding stuff, really like that demanding musical interplay, you get that. But if you also like good hard rock songs mixed with a lot of pop melodies, you get that as well. So another strong album, Defying Gravity. Love that cover art too, pretty cool. I'm an elephant fan, so cool to see the elephants on the front. So Frontiers Records. All right, we're going to hop over to AFM. Our folks at EFM Records. This first one is from a German power metal band who have been around for a number of years. I'm talking about Roland Grapoff's Masterplan. This latest is called Pumpkins, to kind of celebrate, the anniversary of Halloween. There's a lot going on in the Halloween camp these days. So you've got the Michael Kiske and Kai Hansen joining up with the current band. They're going to go out and do a tour. They're going to play a lot of classic Halloween stuff. Pretty cool, right? Well, Roland, also a ex-member of Halloween, decided he didn't want to lose out on the action. So what did he do? He took his current band, Masterplan, went into the studio and re-recorded a bunch of classic Halloween material that he had originally played on. So a lot of the albums from the 90s and the early 2000s. So, you've got, all with the current lineup of Masterplan. So you got The Chance, Someone's Crying, Mankind, Step Out of Hell, which is really good, Mr. Ego, Escalation, The Time of the Oath, Music, The Dark Ride, Take Me Home. Yeah, all good stuff. It's a little bit... I dig this album because, I like all the Halloween material. And I think what makes this album so intriguing is that, this band, Masterplan, doesn't really sound like Halloween. And in particular, vocalist Rick Altsey sounds a lot like Jorn Lande, previous Masterplan vocalist. So it's kind of cool to hear that Dio/Coverdale style vocal presence singing these old Halloween tunes. So, he doesn't sound at all like any of the previous Halloween vocalists or current Halloween vocalists, Andy Kurtz or Michael Kiske. So it's just, I like it. Is this mandatory listening? If you're a real big Masterplan fan and you're looking for a new album of all new material, you may be kind of like, Jesus, did we really need to do this? But, I totally get that because I love Masterplan as well. But this is kind of a cool curiosity. It's worth a few listens. It's fun. Like I said, they give their own twist on these Halloween songs. And I dig it. It's pretty cool. So, Pumpkins. Andy Darris, not Andy Kurtz, what was I saying? Current Halloween singer. Sorry about that. Also on AFM Records, the latest from German power metal veterans Orden Ogan. This is called Gunman. All right, it's a concept album. All about the Wild West, obviously. You get a bonus DVD as well. Very solid band, I've always thought. For whatever reason, they never fully captivated me. I'm kind of hit or miss on a lot of power metal stuff, as a lot of you may know who've been following Sea of Tranquility for a number of years. And I've always thought this band's material has been very solid, but didn't always leave me wanting to come back for more. This is very, very good. This, I think, might be the best album I've ever heard from them, and I've only heard a couple. But it's instantly catchy. You would think like a concept album is not something you're going to get into on first listen, right? But like the melodies on here are awesome. The riffs are great. There's great symphonic keyboards. There's a lot of groove, a lot of like hard driving rhythms, and there's just like an epic nature to a lot of these songs. Yet at the same time, the melodies and the harmonies are instantly accessible. Very catchy. I dig it a lot. The vocals are great. Guitar work is great. The only complaint I have is if you can see like a lot of browns and dark grays and things like that, and they decided throughout the entire digipack and the booklet to print all of the words in like red. So it's like almost impossible to read half this stuff. Other than that, a really, really fun album, a power metal album that really surprised the hell out of me, and I dig this quite a bit. So if you've never checked out Orden Ogan, I'd start with this one and work your way back. Quite good. Concept album about the Wild West. All right, we're going to move on over to Jun Records. The first one is the latest album by Serbian, who now lives in Spain, guitar player Dusan Jevtovic. It's called No Answer. That's it right here. Now let's take a look at the guys. Let's open this up a little bit. There he is right there. He's playing alongside on keyboards. He's got Vasil Hadzimanov. Hadzimanov. Let's get that straight here. And on drums, Asaf Sirkis. Very good album. All instrumental, obviously. It's kind of jazzy. It's avant-garde. Little bits of rock. It's not your typical jazz album, and it's also not your typical Jun album. It's funny because in the press release, and I noted it in my review on the website, they mention how it's kind of like an ECM record, ECM Records record. And if any of you are familiar with ECM records, you kind of know what I'm talking about, the mood and feel, a lot of those things mixed with a little bit of Radiohead played at like a smoky jazz club or something like that. That kind of makes sense. There's a real heavy ECM feel on here. I like the guitar style of Jevtovic. He's, again, he's not your run-of-the-mill jazz player. He's got his own unique style. He rocks out a bit in spots. A lot of times he gets a little jazzy, a speedy player when he wants to, but atmospheric as well. I really like this a lot. Very, very good if you like kind of the more avant-garde, dare I say, bits of prog and rock side of the jazz spectrum. Jun Records. Okay, this next album is actually not technically a Jun release, although they are distributing digital copies here in the U.S. This is the latest from South America. They're actually from Sao Paulo, Brazil. Dialeto. It's called Bartok in Rock. Basically what they've done is they have taken a bunch of classic Bartok compositions and rocked them up. Rocking the boat, baby. I like this a lot. This is really, really cool. So you've got these kind of avant-garde Bartok compositions from a million years ago, and they've injected a healthy dose of like instrumental rock and jazz fusion into it, bits of prog, and it's pretty damn good. It's moody, it's savage, it's atmospheric, it's raucous. I think Nelson Coelho is a fantastic guitar player. You know what this reminds me of a little bit in a lot of spots. If you can imagine a meeting of like vintage King Crimson and the Mahavishnu Orchestra coming together and playing Bartok tunes. That's what it sounds like to me. It's got that whole vibe going. In fact, David Cross, ex-violinist from King Crimson from their early mid-70s period, also appears on one tune on here, actually adding more to the Crimson thing I just talked about. So I dig this a lot. Really, really cool. And there's 10 tunes on here, and you've got like the 6-part Requiem folk dances. Well, I'm sorry, Romanian folk dances, which is actually pretty neat. And I like it. It's good. Very good. As far as instrumental albums go, this should be on your radar. Very, very different. Very cool. All right, we're going to go to Belgium now for space rock veterans Quantum Fantay, Tessellation of Euclidean Space. Okay. That's the title of this bad boy. They're on Progressive Promotion Records, and we've covered them on the site before. These guys, they remind me a lot of Ozric Tentacles. Okay, so a lot of kind of ripping, searing guitar work, bubbling synths, frantic rhythms, occasional industrial and dance beats, lots of electronica, that sort of thing. Here they kind of throw a little bit more prog into play. So there's more atmospheric stuff. There's more traditional style 70s prog keyboards and some really, really great guitar work. I like it a lot. Of course, it's all instrumental. They also include lots of flute and some sax on here as well, adding a little jazzy element, a little folk element, which I really like. A couple tunes on here remind me of like an instrumental meeting of like Jethro Tull and Genesis, like classic Genesis, classic Tull. With the flute and all the sumptuous keyboards and all that kind of stuff. But I really dig it. Some of the stuff is like Ozric's, a little bit of Hawkwind, that sort of thing. I like it a lot. A very underrated band that I think falls under the radar quite a bit. Like I said, I've liked their last couple of releases, and this one is quite good again. So it's called Tessellation of Euclidean Space. Pretty gets my vote for one of the coolest album titles of the year, if nothing else, right? All right, so we're going to go to a kind of, he's sort of a legendary guitar player, maybe an unknown legendary guitar player, underrated legendary guitar player. Here's a guy who, he's been around playing in notable bands and in sessions since like the mid-late 60s. He appeared at Woodstock, for crying out loud, playing lead guitar for Canned Heat. He recorded a bunch of tracks on a Rolling Stones album, okay, when Mick Taylor left. He's also played with a ton of other people. And but he's been pretty quiet in recent years. This is his first album in, I believe, like 20 years or something like that. Of course, I'm talking about Harvey Mandel. Snake Attack is his latest. How cool is that? Guitar, right? Look at that. There's Mr. Mandel on the back. It's a kind of a quick album. It's only about 30, 35 minutes long. We've got about 10 tracks. It's stuff that he's been working on for the last couple of years. And I think most of it was recorded over the last year or two, but just released now. And it's mostly all instrumental. He plays just about everything. There's some funk on here. There's some electronica. There's some hard rock. Little bits of jazz, some blues. A little mix of everything. It's very eclectic. Not your run-of-the-mill instrumental guitar album by any means. And I think if you've ever been interested in the career of Harvey Mandel or any of his playing from 30, 40, 50 years ago, I think you'd really like to check this out. It's very, very different. So for all your guitar fans, be on the lookout for that. Snake Attack. All right, speaking of guitar, here's a guy. This is a great story. So I'm going to say 15 years ago, 14, 15 years ago, something like that. I was at a club in southern New Jersey that does not exist anymore. And I went to go see Symphony X and I believe Blind Guardian. I believe. It's a long time ago. And I was standing at the bar with a bunch of friends of mine. And I happened to run into this guy who was handing out flyers. And he came up to talk to me and he handed me a flyer. And I told him who I was and how I was, had this website, Sea of Tranquility, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, wow, I just released a new album and I would love to have you hear it and possibly review it. So gave him my contact information. I believe he either sent me an album or gave me the album there that night. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. In fact, it's funny because he and I emailed recently about his new release, and he brought up that meeting way back when, and I would have totally forgotten about it. I was like, yes, that is correct. You have a good memory, my friend. So anyway, fast forward. So anyway, shortly after that, I reviewed his album, debut album. It's very, very good. Here we are like 15 years later. And he contacts me out of the blue and reminds me of all that and says, I've got a brand new CD out. Would love you to review it, which we've done. And the name of the guitar player is originally from New Jersey. He now resides out in Los Angeles, California. His name is Neil Rambaldi. A Call to the Wild is his latest solo record. Instrumental guitar compositions. It's fantastic. This guy is a monster player. But what I really like about this album, I hear a ton of instrumental guitar albums. I do. And I've gotten to the point where the ones where it's just shred for shred's sake, I really can't get into anymore. Those days are long gone. Back in the 80s, mid-late 80s, that was all the rage. I totally loved it back then. Now it's like if you're going to do something like that, you got to mix it up. You got to show some variety. You can't just sit there and wail for 10 songs in 45 minutes. Neil gets that. So while, yes, there are a handful of hard rock tunes with some jaw-dropping lead guitar work and musical virtuosity, there's some flamenco on here, some classical stuff, little bits of funk, little bits of jazz, very tasty playing, very emotional playing, some great melodies. It's important. He's a great guitar player, but he also can write some really good tunes. And he knows how to kind of cross different genres and really mix it up a bit, and I really like that. So Neil Rambaldi, A Call to the Wild. Highly recommend you check this out. You can get your hands on it if you like instrumental guitar music. This is one of the better ones I've heard in a while. And he's a guy who deserves to be heard by the masses. So, Lion Music and all the kind of guitar labels out there, check this guy out. I think he's well deserving of finding a spot on one of your rosters. Really do. All right, so now we've got some reissues and collections and things like that. So from our friends at Angel Air Records over in the UK, here's something by a little-known band who kind of came and went pretty quickly in the early mid 70s. Band is called Snafu. It's live in Nottingham, 1976. Snafu were basically put together by Bobby Harrison, vocalist. He also played some drums, but mainly known as a vocalist. He had a band called Freedom. He also was briefly in Procol Harum. Decided to go from there and form this band Snafu. He found this guy from Juicy Lucy, Mickey Moody, who we all know later went on to David Coverdale's new band Whitesnake. So, and as you can imagine, seeing as this was recorded in '76 and the first Whitesnake album came out shortly thereafter, this band didn't last that long, or Moody didn't last that long here. In fact, he was later replaced, when he left, he was replaced by Clem Clemson, late of Humble Pie, but that the lineup did not work and didn't last and the band broke up. But anyway, back to Snafu. Really interesting band, kind of a mix of funk and R&B and hard rock. Okay, different, little bits of jazz. Very different. You would think it would be more of a bluesy hard rock band, but kind of not. If you listen to any of these guys' other things that they've done, but I really dig this a lot. This is, and in fact, it's making me want to go investigate some of the Snafu solo records because there's 3 studio albums. So go check them out. But basically, here you've got a mix of original material, a couple covers, and it's pretty representative of their style. The recording's not the best, okay, You get a handful of songs from this particular, I believe it was a live radio broadcast show, and then Harrison later, once this band broke up, he formed this band Niagara, who were actually pretty good, but the only known recordings I believe are on here as bonus tracks, and they're also radio recordings. Pretty crappy audio quality, but the songs are really, really cool, kind of more in like a catchy hard rock sort of style. So anyway, another good recording from the vaults, from Angel Air, Snafu, live in Nottingham, 1976. From there, okay, we're going to go to our friends over at MIG, made in Germany. This is a 2004 CD DVD set from I'm going to call them a legendary because they pretty much are, German prog / hard rock / space rock band Jane. This is Peter Panka's version of Jane. Peter Panka was the founding drummer and lead vocalist. Basically, Jane has split off into a couple factions, right? So they started in 1970, released a string of really, really popular albums in Germany and other parts of the world. Kind of they mix like heavy Hammond organ and mellotron and some synths with like heavy guitar riffs, and it's just kind of like that Pink Floyd, Eloy type of thing, right? Prog meets space rock type of thing. A handful of very, very, very good albums in the early mid-70s. Then they broke up and they got back together. They broke up, got back together. So this brings together the original bass player, the original drummer, like I said, Peter Panka, as well as the original keyboard player, a couple of new guitar player or recent guitar player, and played most of the classics. So, you got All My Friends, Fire, Water, Earth, and Air, which is a great tune. Way to Paradise, Windows, Spain, Hangman, So Long, Back Again. Some of the more memorable tunes. The recording is very, very good. This is from Rock Palace, German TV show, 2004. And you've also got a DVD of the whole show. So you got both on audio and video. Quality is great on both. Get a nice booklet in here. It's just and unfortunately, Mr. Panka passed away just 3 years after they did this. But the interesting thing is, after that happened, this band decided, for the most part, to keep on as Peter Panka's Jane, even without Peter, obviously. And then the keyboard player, the founding keyboard player, left to form his version of Jane. So you've got two factions of Jane going on right now. Where have we heard that before, right? So, but anyway, another very, very solid release from MIG. If you're a fan of the classic Jane material, worth checking this out. If you've never listened to Jane before, investigate this, and you're going to want to go out and get all the old stuff. All right, so we're running long here. So here we've got To the Moon and Back, 20 Years and Beyond from Blackmores Night, a 2 CD kind of compilation celebrating the 20 years of Blackmores Night. Very good set. You got Shadow of the Moon, Spirit of the Sea, Renaissance Fair, Spanish Nights, Fire at Midnight, Ghost of a Rose, Village Lantern, all sorts of stuff here. So you've got basically original versions of a lot of these classic tunes. They went into the studio and re-recorded a handful of them, as well as included, I believe, 3 new tracks, one of which is a remake of the Rainbow classic I Surrender, with Candace singing vocals. It's very, very good. And a couple other things here and there. A remake of the classic song "Land of Hope and Glory," which I like quite a bit. So it's if you've never investigated Blackmore's Night, again, Richie Blackmore, ex of Deep Purple and Rainbow. This is his kind of well, I shouldn't say ex of Rainbow because Rainbow kind of still exists right now. They're back, but definitely ex Deep Purple. Blackmore's Night is kind of his folk and medieval acoustic, mostly acoustic project with his wife Candace Knight that he's been doing now for 20 years. If you like kind of minstrel, Renaissance style music, you like this. This is a good collection. For those of you who have never discovered Blackmore's Night, this is a great way to start. Really, really good set. A lot of tunes on here. Like I said, there's 2 discs, most of their classics, and a couple new things. All right, real quick before we get to Forgotten Favorites, we've got a video here called Lone Star, Stevie Ray Vaughan, 1984-89, a documentary on the life of the great 80s blues man who unfortunately died tragically in 1989 in that helicopter crash. But this kind of includes a documentary featuring lots of interviews and live clips of Stevie's kind of rise to fame. in 1984 with his first solo album, also with David Bowie, and then all throughout his career up until his death. Talks a lot about his battles with addictions and whatnot, but more importantly, it talks about just what a monster musician he was, and it does get into the rough years when he was hitting rock bottom, but it also talks a lot about when he got sober. And the sad thing is that he was clean and sober for a couple of years and very, very happy at the time of his death, which makes the whole thing even sadder. But this film is not sanctioned by the estate of Stevie Ray Vaughan. I need to mention that, but it is a very cool watch. And if you like Stevie Ray Vaughan and you can find this somewhere cheap, I highly recommend watching it. All right, with that, we're going to go to Forgotten Favorites. So here we take a look at an album from the vaults, either way in the past or more recent, that are big, big favorites of mine, but maybe never really got their due with the mainstream public or just never got noticed at all. This is an album by a band that is a favorite of a lot of people, but for whatever reason, when most folks talk about this band, they talk about, the Jailbreak album, they talk about Fighting, they talk about Thunder and Lightning, and all deservedly so. Those are great albums, bad reputation. But one of my favorites from Thin Lizzy has always been Johnny the Fox. I've got a real soft spot for this album. I think it's easily, for me, in their top three. There are times where I go back and forth as my favorite between this and Fighting and Jailbreak. Those, for me, are my three favorites. There are sometimes I listen to this album, I'm like, this is the best. This is the best. And I'll tell you why. Because, it's got the great ballad Borderline. It's got another mellow tune, which is one of their most legendary songs, Don't Believe a Word. Actually, that's not a mellow tune. That's a pretty rockin' tune. Borderline's a little more mellow. Fool's Gold is a great kind of pop tune, but it's got that Thin Lizzy, thing going on. I love Johnny the Fox Meets Jimmy the Weed. That's a great kind of hard rock and funk song. You've got Massacre, one of their heavier tunes, right? Boogie Woogie Dance is a fun tune. Of course, you got Johnny, which is a great tune. Sweet Marie. Top to bottom, back to front, a classic. A forgotten favorite by one of the most important hard rock bands in history, Thin Lizzy. Influenced so many other acts, and again, probably other than the hardcore fans, one of those bands that never really got the success that they deserved, and it's a real shame. But you know what? We all remember them fondly now, and that's the important thing. So with that, I'm going to leave you for another week. This is Pete Pardo with Sea of Tranquility. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. And, of course, we're here on the mighty YouTube. We'll see you next time. We've got some rants. We got some more What's Hot stuff coming up in the weeks ahead, so be sure to stay tuned. In the meantime, check out all this new great music, but don't forget the classics. Take care. Bye-bye.